Welcome everybody. Canary and Crawfish Practicum orientation happening now. So let me go ahead and share my screen and then we'll hit the ground running. Okay, so here's what our agenda for tonight looks like. It should be within an hour unless there's lots of questions or things to work through, but we'll just do a short little like 3 to 5 minutes, breakout groups just to break the ice. So that way you can meet with the people that are in your groups and talk about what your goals are for practicum, because some people might want to focus more on one aspect than another. And then we'll cover an overview as far as what the structure of it is like, what the overall goals are for all of the students to be able to achieve throughout the practicum. We'll talk about curriculum and the tools you'll be using, roles and expectations, and kind of give an idea of an example week of what to expect. And then we'll dig a little bit deeper after we kind of do that overview to be able to take a look at tools and resources, including like GitHub projects and using Slack for huddles and call features. We'll do a little short demo of handling a merge conflict. That way you can kind of get a visual of what it is before you have to dive into any of that in the next 8 weeks. Just a reminder of CTD culture, since you're going to be working more collaboratively than you did in the class. And then just some helpful tips and next steps, and of course, question and answer, but feel free to fire those questions off in chat or unmute and interrupt if you have any questions throughout the process. So let me pause recording real quick and I will take you all into your breakout rooms. Good. All right. So we had the advanced classes, the React where you did the to-do list app, and the Ruby on Rails where you each did your own unique individual project. The React class gets broken into small groups, and then the small groups decide together within the small group what it is that you're going to be creating for your practicum project. For the Ruby on Rails class, and they're broken into small groups if there are enough of you to break into more than one small group, which was not the case this time. And then you'll work together on whoever's project had the most votes or the most interest among you as far as which one you wanted to continue to build on. So for the Ruby on Rails group, then that is actually Miguel's just joining us now. That's going to be working on Miguel's project. Welcome, Miguel. We're just getting started. And then for the React classes, then you're split into groups of 3 or 4 students. Each group will have its own mentor, regardless of what class you are in, and that'll be your primary mentor for the person that will meet when you have your weekly meetings with you, to be able to help you through any areas that might be confusing or that you need an experienced eye on to be able to provide input, that kind of a thing. And then we are going to be having backup mentors this time around, so that if you are needing something urgently and your mentor isn't accessible for you, then you do have another option of somebody that you can contact and be like, hey, I'm blocked on this feature and people have tried to help me and I'm not making any progress and we need to make progress in it. Then you have somebody else that you can turn to for assistance, either technical or for just sort of project advising. Questions about the structure at all?
Is there like a list? Oh, wait, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Is there like a list of things for us to decide on for projects, or do we just need to like kind of brainstorm one up, or?
Yeah, so the for the first the beginning information at the bottom of your main class page, like the getting started area or whatever, then there should be at least two links in there, Kenneth, that are links to ideas for projects that you can build in React. And some of them are like more common, some of them are more basic. So take a look at just sort of the library of options that you have and think about what would most interest you or what would be unique to build or might involve some things that you'd like to practice a little bit more with. Like if you wanted to do more with sort of open source stuff, then you might want to do like a weather API or something along those lines. Okay. But just take a look at the options and talk about it. And then when your mentor is with your group for the first week, then you'll also want to discuss with them as far as like, is this a project that's realistic given, the tools that we're being given and sort of what our curriculum is for the class.
So if I click on week 1, that one has the links to different ideas?
It'll actually be, let me switch over to my other screen real quick. And I think it's going to be just on the main page here. Okay. So classes, Canary Practicum, And then it should be, yeah, in sort of the before you begin section. Yep, here we go. Articles like this one or this link.
Oh, I
So
see
it's
it.
in that second paragraph. Sorry, I should have bold-faced those to
No,
make them
that's
jump
fine.
out a little more. But yeah, that'll give you an idea as far as some things that you can take a look at and decide if it's what your group's interested in that you might want to build.
Okay.
All right. So your curriculums are located just on the learn.codethedream.org website. It's Red Crawfish Backend Practicum for the Crawfish class and Red Canary React Practicum for the Canary class. As you saw when I was navigating to it, you can just get it through the classes drop down and select along there. I think I still have the Canary and Crawfish class content up. So if you needed or wanted to refer back to any of your lessons, it's accessible, but I might be pulling those off of the navigation links this week. So if you haven't, I would suggest bookmarking your main page for your class for the Canary or Crawfish class, like the individual portion that you all already completed, just so that way you can look back at your old lessons if you needed or wanted to reference as you're working through some stuff. So primary goals for the React class, we want to make sure that you have exposure to Firebase, which is sort of a mock backend, and it'll help give a basic understanding of sort of that API backend structure and how it's used by the React front end, and then just continue practice with React. And then for the Ruby on Rails practicum, then it's just an opportunity to give you sort of continued use of your skills learned in class, as well as, optional further exposure to, gems or other things that you can put into play, features, user experience, things that you can add on to the project that was already built to kind of flesh it out a little more, or maybe improve a user experience, that kind of a thing. But regardless of which class you're in, we want to make sure that you're learning how to work cooperatively and collaboratively with others on one body of code. And that's why we're going to do a demo of a simple git merge conflict. So that way you can kind of get an idea of it and a visual of it before you potentially encounter them in your process. We want to make sure that you get comfortable with workflow processes that are out there in the industry, like Agile, Scrum, stand-ups, those kind of things. Gaetan or Sinan or Zach or Jamie, would any of you like to kind of chime in and give sort of a general idea of what Agile and Scrum means to the students?
Sure, I'll jump in. Go ahead.
No, please.
Okay, so there are nuanced differences. This is Jamie here, but each morning in Scrum, each workday morning in Scrum, it's an opportunity. It's a short. Let me back up. When we have stand up each day, that is part of the Scrum process, and for us, it's a 5-minute meeting. It usually bleeds over into 15 or 20 minutes, but in theory, it's supposed to be a 5-minute meeting, and you share with the rest of your team, very often at a conference table if you're in person, or at a conference call or Skype, Zoom. And very briefly, quickly, because nobody wants to listen to someone ramble on, they say, this is what I'm working on today. And this is for, just a reminder, this is for stand-up, which is an aspect of Scrum. This is what I'm working on today. This is what I worked on yesterday. And these are my blockers. You'll hear blockers a lot. My blockers are the things that I cannot my blockers are the things in my way to accomplish my goal from yesterday. And that's an opportunity for your colleagues to chime in, or maybe someone superior to you, or someone maybe on a database team who has information that you don't have access to yet. During this 5-minute stand-up or this 15-minute stand-up, you can share with the rest of your team, this is my hurdle. And so they have an opportunity to say, okay, well, I've got a meeting in 2 hours. I'll circle back around with you later this afternoon. And it's just a quick, concise way of sharing your progress and letting the team know where you're headed towards the end of the week, or towards the end of your 2-week deadline.
Awesome. Thank you, Jamie. Anybody else have anything they want to add or chime in with? Sinan, I think you were getting ready to say something too.
No, I think Jamie explained well, actually. Like, I can just say, the Scrum is like one way of how we manage the agile project management, and we have kind of like specific meetings every day, and basically we call it sprint, and how long this sprint is take. Basically, we are kind of like having some meetings daily or weekly or every 2 weeks. It depends on the project or how we want to set. And yeah, this is the basic daily stand-up is the one of the most frequently occurring meeting in the Scrum, and it's kind of like almost every morning it happens, and just like less than 15 minutes we are sharing basically what we have done yesterday, what we are working on today, or if there is any blocker or other team members needs to know, and we are just sharing this information. Yeah, that's
Perfect. Thanks. Anything else to add?
Yeah, I'd like to continue just a little bit. The stand-up process usually happens every day. Usually, sometimes it happens every other day or every 3 days, but that's one building block of the agile process. And as it usually it encompasses often a 2-week deadline. So there are a few things that your team will agree to do every 2 weeks. So the terminology is escaping me, but let's say Monday you meet as a team and you discuss what you're going to accomplish as a team for the next 2 weeks. And then that's broken down into each day that's broken down into a stand-up meeting. At the end of that 2-week process, I was just mentioned, I forgot what it's.
Sprint.
Thank you. At the end
Yep.
of that sprint, you again meet, but it's a longer meeting, and you discuss what has been accomplished, what hasn't been accomplished. Maybe you didn't get access to that database like you needed, and so that activity, I'll call it, is pushed over to the next sprint. And so in a corporate atmosphere, you are responsible to the stakeholder. Maybe that's your CEO, maybe that's the company that hired your company. But if too many of these tasks are getting pushed over, then the stakeholder is going to start complaining and letting your boss know, hey, you guys are behind. Conversely, if you guys finish your tasks ahead of time, then the stakeholder is going to be excited. They're going to be happy that you can take on more activity or more tasks, and as a result, your boss will be happy. And it's a metric that's used to agile is a methodology to get the work done, and depending on how much of these tasks you accomplish will in turn make your boss happy or make your boss not happy. And maybe if you're a small dev shop, if you fall behind on too many of these sprints, 6 months down the road, your whole team may be let go or reassigned to a different project, and you will another team will pick up this particular task. That's all.
All right, thanks, Jamie. So as you can see, communication is a very big key, regardless of, whether you're meeting daily, whether you're in the middle of a Scrum, a stand-up, or Agile. So it's really important to communicate with one another as far as where you're at. Obviously, in the Practicum, you're not in a professional environment, but we want you to kind of start getting your feet wet with that process. So that's why your weekly meetings will kind of serve as like your Agile meetings, to where you'll take a look at, okay, what are we going to be doing this week? How are we going to tackle it? And then we'd also like you either daily or at least every other day touch base. It does not have to be synchronously. You can just put up a post in Slack, or if you're using the GitHub projects that we'll be showing you later, update that. So that way every day you all know, okay, who's working on what? Does anybody have any areas that if I finish my work early, I can go help them? Or if you're stuck on something, then your teammates are aware and they can help you, whatever the situation may be. So the big thing is we want to make sure that in the process of learning how this workflow goes, that you're also strengthening your communication skills and making sure that everybody on the team's on the same page. You'll also get a little bit of exposure getting comfortable with project management devices. I had mentioned GitHub projects. We'll be showing you that in the later half of this. You can also use other things out there like Trello. I think there are other, I can't think of the others off the top of my head, but there are plenty of products out there that give you sort of a you can put everybody's tasks on little cards and assign those cards to particular people. So that way it's clear who's working on what at any given point. And then you just organize those cards as far as like, this hasn't been started yet. This is what we're working on. This is completed. This will only be completed if I can collaborate with somebody else and we can get it working together, that kind of a thing. So it's just a visual way to organize who's doing what within the team.
Well, this is
And at what
great.
status it's at. Yeah, yeah. Throughout the whole 8-week process, then you'll start learning about how projects are kind of managed from concept through build, through testing, and possible deployment. Don't focus too hard on, you know, at the end of 8 weeks, this is going to be a perfectly finished project that's ready to roll out to app stores, because that's an unrealistic goal to build something really complete and polished and finished in an 8-week period. So don't put that much pressure on yourselves. We really want you to focus on the learning part of it. And the project that you build is just the vehicle to be able to get you there. The merge conflict that we talked about, you'll take a look at what that's like, and you'll also be learning about code review, because inevitably you'll wind up being in a position of authority over somebody else as you make your way through your development career. And so it's important to kind of get an idea of what's the proper and professional way to be able to review people's code. And then at the very end, then you'll participate in demoing your work. So we invite you all to the weekly cafe, which is held Tuesdays at noon. So that way you can just demonstrate, like, this is how our team did throughout the process, and this is what we have to show for it. So the secondary goal is to build and deploy an app, but the primary goals are to be working together and learning the tools that you use when you are collaborating and working together. Questions about goals at all? Good. All right. So then, how it's going to be similar versus how it's going to be different. So similar to your advanced class, you are going to have weekly lessons that are posted on your curriculum course calendar page there, and the lessons are outlined as far as like, here's what we want you learning and working on. So you'll have objectives and you'll have your resources, but it's not a strict like, okay, sit down for 3 hours, watch this tutorial, and then do this little coding assignment. Because especially for the React class and in the Ruby on Rails class too, actually, projects can vary from practicum to practicum. So our structure for it is a little more macro vision, I guess, like it's step back and generalizes more, because different projects may have bits and pieces that the lesson pertains to, and others it's like, oh, well, we're not using that particular feature in our app that we're building. So there's less structure, but there still should be plenty of resources available to you. If not, be sure to turn to your mentor or let me know, and I can contact our development team on the CTD Lab side and ask them for resources if you need any. So there might not be specific things about like this specific gem that you're going to use in your Ruby on Rails project. We're not going to have, you know, documentation on that specific whatever. Or if you decide to use like Chakra or MUI for any kind of user interface design in your React, then we're not going to have specific like, this is how to build this, or this is how to use this particular library or product. So you will have to kind of dig into some of those that might be unique to your team. You do have objectives for the team, as well as things that you should be doing on your own, especially for the React. The first couple weeks is to kind of like go through tutorials on your own to get comfortable with Firebase structure and how that plays into React. But you should be working together as a team as well. So if you have questions, or if you want to kind of quiz each other and make sure you're comprehending everything properly, feel free to do that. You'll have a more regular schedule, so communicate daily or at the very least every other day with your team, as opposed to just pop in for a once a week mentor session here or there and do most of the stuff on your own. So that's going to be a big difference. And then just collaborating more with each other. You might not have done very many student study sessions or anything like that in the class up to this point, and you'll be working very much with each other at this point from this point forward. So questions about sort of how it's similar, how it's different at all? Okay, rolling on through. Tools, learn.codethedream.org, select your practicum, either Red Canary Practicum or Red Crawfish Practicum, to be able to see your calendar and get the links to your weekly lessons. You will not have the weekly lessons posted every Wednesday or Monday as you did in the other class. So it's up to you all to be able to meet regularly weekly and just kind of keep on track with what you're supposed to be doing. I would recommend just putting a reminder to yourself every Monday to take a look and see what the topic is and the information is for each given week. Student resources are still available to you. learn.codethedream.org/student resources if you need anything there. As we get closer to the end, if any of you are feeling job ready, then feel free to take a look at the job seekers toolkit that's on the learn.codethedream.org site. That'll help with building up like your LinkedIn, your resume, give you ideas of where you can start looking, that kind of a thing. GitHub, obviously, you'll be using because that's going to be where your repository is housed. Slack channel for collaboration, communication, discussion, Meet for meetings. You can use Google Meet or Zoom private accounts, or whatever works for you all that you're most comfortable using is fine. Since you all are already in Slack, then that's just an easy option if you're comfortable with that. Other tools you might use would be things like Trello, which would have all the cards to be able to organize who's doing what, when, and what stage they're at with that. Google Drive, in case you're keeping any documents for like color schemes or wireframes or anything like that to sort of support the structure to reference as you're building. Dropbox, I don't know, just there's so many various cloud and remote things out there that you can use for passing information to and from each other. So those are things that you might want to implement. Roles and expectations. Code the Dream sets the curriculum and the schedule, assigns the group based on preferences and availabilities, arranges for mentorship, provides any supplemental learning materials, kind of all of sort of the administrative structural parts. But we are here, so if you have any issues and you need help with anything, then feel free to let us know, like, hey, there aren't good enough resources on this particular topic. Can you send me more? Or, there's a communication issue happening here. Can somebody step in? Anything like that, then please feel free to reach out to us for that. Mentors should be attending your weekly meetings. The backup mentors will attend the first week or two, just so that way they get an idea of what your project's about, but they are not required to come to your weekly meetings. But we just wanted them at the first week or two, so that way they have an idea of what it is you're building and some of the basic tools you'll be using to build it. And then from there, if you can't reach your mentor, then feel free to reach out to your backup mentor. They should really be providing sort of a voice of experience, since they've already been working in a professional environment. Then they can give you a better perspective, because when you're first learning, it might be like, oh, well, this is the project we want to do. And it's like, well, with an 8-week time frame, you may want to scale it back a little, or you might have a hard time thinking of, okay, this particular feature needs to be taken care of by this particular student, but that particular feature might be something that needs to or could or should involve more than just one person building on it. So they have that voice of experience to be able to kind of help guide you as far as your scope of your project and how to kind of break it down into smaller, more manageable pieces. And then, of course, helping with your group for any kind of needs that you have. They can also work one-on-one. So if there's a task you're given and you're hitting a blocker and your teammates aren't able to help you, then definitely turn to your mentor for assistance there, because they're all here to support you in your learning to work together and learning of the materials that we're covering. So for you all, you'll complete sort of on your own and as a team activities weekly. Refer to the resources as appropriate for your project. Communicate regularly, attend your group weekly meetings, and we definitely want you to foster sort of a supportive, encouraging, helpful environment. It can be easy to fall into the I'm frustrated with a teammate because they aren't doing XYZ and what I'm doing relies on them doing XYZ. Try and take a step back from that if you find yourself in that situation and be like, maybe the reason they aren't accomplishing that is because they need some help with it. So approach it from a helpful point of view instead of where's my stuff? So we encourage having respectful relationships with your coworkers. The practicum is intended to serve as like a dress rehearsal for your first developer job. So have that same level of professionalism, show up on time for your meetings, listen to people, let them finish their sentences before chiming in. And really think of things in a very professional and objective way and try and leave any feelings out of it. We expect it'll probably be about 10 to 20 hours of work a week for each of you as you're working through the practicum for the different tasks that you will be building. Questions about roles and expectations anywhere? Good, okay. All right, so class flow, Monday through Friday, then you'll be regularly checking in to your project management device, whether that's GitHub Projects or Trello, and update that as needed. We also encourage you to communicate on Slack or communicate regularly or every other day if needed. But like if the GitHub projects or Trello boards aren't doing what you need them to, then at the very least be like, this is what I'm working on. You know, maybe our project board doesn't demonstrate that clearly enough, but here's what I'm working on. Here's what I'm stumped on. Here's what I've gotten done, that kind of a thing. Work on your tasks, communicate with your team about questions and blockers throughout the week. On your meeting day, be sure to do as we were describing in the stand-up Scrum description, where you just give a quick update on the work that you've done over the week, and then come together to be able to say, okay, that's what we've accomplished this week. Let's take a look and see what our next week needs to be looking like. Do we need to kind of refactor anything to be able to achieve what maybe wasn't able to get accomplished this week? Or can we take on other things since we got that done? Just sort of reevaluate what your week is going to look like. Work together on any problems or necessary alterations, that kind of a thing. Feel free to use that time too to kind of get exposure to everything all together. So you may want to do, for the first week or two, you may want to do any kind of merge conflict work together while you're all in one place so that you all can see what is being done. The person whose repository it is will be the one who actually has to handle the merge conflicts themselves, because they're the owner of that particular repository. But it's important for you all to kind of see what that process is, because you may be in a position where you're the one who's handling all of those in a role in the future. You're welcome to work on weekends if you want to. It just depends on what your all schedules are like. So do whatever your team needs, and just make sure that you're clearly communicating with each other as far as like, hey, this needs to get done this weekend versus, you know, no, I've got time during the week to get that accomplished, that kind of a thing. But keep in mind your learning goals and work to build your team skills are the primary focus. Questions so far? Okay, now that you've heard me ramble for about 20 minutes, let's go ahead and start digging into actual like tools and demonstrations here. So there are going to be some tools that'll be new, like Firebase for React, and there might be some gems or things of that nature that you're using in Ruby on Rails that will be new. Slack huddle call features, developmental documentation. So you might have used some of it here and there in your classes, but you will probably be using it that much more throughout your practicum. And it's important to get comfortable and kind of learn how to read those development documentation notes, as far as like, this is how you have to implement, or this is how you have to syntactically write something using this particular product that's being added into your React or being added into your Ruby on Rails. So that's something that your mentors can help you with as far as getting comfortable with that. But most of the items that you would use have development docs or README files that help outline sort of, this is our tool and this is how to use it. Blogs and tutorials, you can always refer to any, there are tons of videos, tutorials, and all kinds of things out there. And a lot of them can really like scale down to something very specific. If you need any assistance wording, like how to search for that particular tutorial or article, then you can check with your mentor as far as like, I need to know specifically how a React hook is supposed to be structured in this particular environment with these circumstances, you know, whatever the case may be. And then of course use mentors and community to be able to help each other out. All right, so Gitan, I'm going to hand it over to you. Let me stop sharing. If you want to demonstrate sort of the GitHub, oh wait, no, sorry, GitHub projects. I'm sorry, I was thinking merge conflict.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So let me do the GitHub projects real quick to be able to show everybody that. I was jumping the gun there. All right, so you've got your account and your particular repository that you'll be using. This was, I just recently did the intro to programming asteroid one just as an example. But so you've got the projects tab here. And then when you first start, then you'll be able to add a new project. I already have a project board built for this particular repository, and I just have it as sample Kanban. A Kanban is, I guess, just the, I don't know the history of it, but I guess it's just the fancy way of like organizing your cards. So when you do the sample Kanban, then it sort of defaults with a to-do, and in progress, and a done. And then it has some helpful tips in there already as far as like, welcome to GitHub projects, and here's how to use this particular tool. This is what a card is. And so they have some default things that are there to sort of demonstrate what it is and how to use it. But we've also added some things so that way you can see, like Jamie added the update the README file to reflect new and updated contact information. I added a little checklist that, you know, our students in our group need to complete the Firebase tutorial, and then I can edit it and mark X's for when those particular students have, you know, like, oh, I finished mine. Did you finish yours? Yeah, you did. Okay, great. Do you need any help with this one? So you can edit things as need be. And then it's as simple as just pulling them and sliding them to whatever particular task area that you need. You can add columns if you need to, as far as like if you want to have one that's organized just for front end stuff or design stuff versus user authentication or anything like that. So you can break it up however you need to. Questions, or is there any part of this feature that anybody would like to see?
I got a quick
more?
question. So this basically, this is not like anything that needs to be pushed or any, this is just basically an area where we have things we need to do, what their status is, and when they're complete.
Exactly. Yeah, it's just a tool that GitHub added into their interface, into their dashboard, that you can have these projects associated with a particular repository. They have some pretty cool integrations too that I have not personally used, but like they have automations as far as, oh, okay, well, if I create an issue in a pull request or in the code file or something, then once I've marked that that particular issue is resolved, then it'll move the card over. So there are some kind of cool features in there that I have not personally used, so you don't want me trying to demonstrate it, but I can give you an idea of what it means and how that works. If you feel like digging into it, feel free to. You can also do this in your own repositories and play around with it. So it's, you know, whatever you want to do as far as feeling comfortable with that. Yeah, other questions? Thank you for asking that, Kenneth.
Like some conditional statements on whether these cards going to move or not.
Exactly. It's like, will we get these accomplished?
If they finish this, slide the card to the right.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. All right. So that gives you an idea of that. And then I also just wanted to kind of show Slack real quick. Let me pull up the right thing. Sorry, I have like 8 gazillion channels, guys. So bear with me while I try and get myself to the proper one here. Okay. Where are we at? Where are we at? All right. So let me pull this on screen so that way you can see it.
By the way,
yeah,
Mary, you do a great job. Thank you.
Oh, thanks. I'm trying to make sure that you at least have visuals on all the tools, because I know that's always the hardest part for me, is if I'm dealing with something that all of a sudden has a new interface compared to what I've used, and I need a minute to be able to find my feet. Okay, so within your group, since you'll have your members already there, then you can start calls. So this little feature down here is to start a huddle. Huddles, I think, do let you screen share, but I'm not 100% certain on that. Let me just see out of curiosity.
Yes, they do. They do.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Sahela.
No problem.
So you just click a button to be able to start the huddle. You can invite people. So if, you know, somebody forgot, oh yeah, we're meeting right now, then you can invite the person who hasn't joined yet, and they'll get a little purple pop-up invitation saying join the call. Yeah, okay, perfect. So that would be how you'd be able to share your screen, and you'd select whatever tab or whatever you need to have open. You can mute yourself if you need to. So it's got some features there. The other way that you can do it is trying to see, because those are calls. I think you wind up having to do it in a particular. I think you have to do it in a particular. Yeah, if it's a particular channel with one individual, then you can start a call like so, just by clicking the phone, and then it'll dial them. You can also screen share there. The nice feature with Slack for screen share is it lets you write on the screen, so it helps make it easier to point out, like, this is where on your screen I'm talking about. And it just is like a little pen icon that you can use. So that way, if Suhaila was sharing her screen while we were on a Slack call, and I needed to point out something that was like, oh, the link's right over here, and she was having a hard time finding it, then I could just use my little mouse to draw on her screen share, and it would show up on her screen. Oh, okay, this is where Mary Alice is pointing to at it for me. Questions about that? Good. Okay. All right. So that gives you an idea of Slack stuff. But like I said, if you all feel more comfortable using Google Meet or a private Zoom account or anything like that, then that's perfectly acceptable too. All right. Let me find my mouse.
Just want to chime in real quick about drawing.
Yeah.
I discovered recently that if you're in Slack and you want to use that drawing feature, the person who is sharing their screen needs to share the entire, I think the entire desktop rather than the individual window.
Oh, that's good to know. Thank you, Jamie.
Yeah, the drawing feature did not work for me until and unless they had their entire desktop
The
shared.
whole screen. Okay, that's good to know. All right, perfect. All right, so that demos those. Questions about GitHub projects or Slack? Good, nice. All right, merge conflicts. This is where Gaetan's going to show us the fun and adventures.
All right. Let's do it. Can I share? Okay, go.
I might have to make you co-host. Oh, no, you're good. Okay, all right.
No, I got it. Everybody see my screen?
Yep.
All right, so merge conflict. So yesterday afternoon, I made Mary Alice collaborator of this repo. And next thing you know, I get a pull request and she's trying to overwrite my work.
I'm such a troublemaker.
This is not a good thing, right? So, here's the pull request. Here's Mary Alice's pull request right here. And this is telling me that this branch has conflicts that must be resolved. Okay, so something is wrong here. So merge conflicts happen when edits are made in two separate branches on the same line. Or for example, one file gets deleted from one branch and then the other branch has edits to that same file that's been deleted, and then you do the pull request and we've got a problem, right? Because here's a file that was deleted and now Mary Alice is trying to make edits to that file that doesn't exist anymore. So Git is kind of confused as to what to do. Git handles merges quite nicely most of the time, but in this case, it just doesn't know what to do. So in this particular case, Mary Alice decided to edit a README file. And so if I go back a little bit, let me just look at what she did. So I'm gonna go here. So this is the merge right here. So I have my README file, and on the first line, it used to say README. So that's what was committed to the branch. And then Mary Alice changed this to final project. And she also deleted a couple of lines below. But the most important part here is that on that same line where there was a README, she changed it to final project. Okay, so let's take a look at the pull request. Okay, so obviously GitHub tells you that there's a conflict here, and you get this button called resolve conflicts. Okay, so they give you a chance to look at what happened and trying to resolve it so you can actually merge the work, right? So I'm going to click on this resolve conflict button here. And it's going to come up with this editor here that allows me to kind of figure out what's going on, what I want to keep, and what I want to delete out of this. Okay, so I can decide, hey, Mary Alice, you had no right to change my file, and I can just get rid of whatever she did. Or I can decide to keep both things, which I can do right in this editor. Keep everything, like we basically merge everything. It's got my changes, it's got this line here, and it's got Mary Alice's changes as well. And I can mark this as resolved if I'm happy with that.
That where it says line 2, where it says changing this line to cause a conflict.
Yeah, she actually, I think.
Yeah, that was my
put that
text.
in, right?
Okay,
Yeah,
so
that was
just
my
like a
text. That's
comment.
not something that you would see.
It
Yeah.
is, yes.
Yeah.
It
Okay.
is. So once the file looks good, you just click on mark as resolved. And this is a simple conflict because it only, it happened on one file and it's pretty simple to resolve, right? So you might run into conflict with multiple files and they'll all be listed here. And you basically have to go through all the changes that people made and attempt to resolve the conflict. Okay, so there's a bit of a review process going on. a lot of communication between team members to see, hey, how can we make this merge work some way, somehow, right? So how do you avoid that in the first place? First of all, if possible, try to work on different files. Don't try to work on the same files at the same time. And if you must work on the same files at the same time, then communicate as far as what changes you're about to make, right? So, I know the React folks, especially, try to create components, within your application to kind of split up the code base, right? If you've got one big file that everybody's working on at the same time, you are going to run into conflicts. That's not a good thing, right? So communicate, there's nothing worse than, people feeling like you've overwritten like you're trying to change their code without them knowing about it.
And we just like let them know, make a rule like that. Everybody, okay, before we push anything up or commit anything, we let each other know that we're going to do it.
So before you do that, way before you do that, you need to understand who's working on what. Okay, so during your stand up or whatever, just trying to figure out who's working on what, who needs to touch what file. And if, try to look at the history behind the file and see who's the last person that touched it. And if you're going to make drastic changes to the file, just communicate with that person, right? Because if you don't, there's going to be tension in the team, so communication helps, as long as you communicate, I think you'll be fine. So right here, once the file looks good, I can click on mark as resolved. And then I get this green commit merge button that basically merges the file. So if I go back to the pull request, oops, hold on. Page is out of date. Okay. I'm gonna leave anyway. Okay, so now the merge conflict has been resolved, and I can just merge the pull request right here.
So if this was already have been merged before, then she had made a change, that would have been fine, right? As long as one of them was, as long as it was already merged, the pull request. Or if there's any change that's different from how it was before, even if it's been merged already, will it cause the conflict?
Well, it depends on what you're changing, right? So the problem happened here because she changed, she made a change on the same line, right? So I had README and she had something else. So Git is confused as to which one is the right one.
So if it would have been on a different line, it would have been perfectly fine.
It would have probably been okay. Yes,
okay.
They'll just have merged it and just added her line to my file, right?
Okay.
That would have been okay. Yeah, so it depends on what you do. So yeah. Changes to the same line will cause conflict, file deletion and edits in another branch will cause conflicts as well. So then
Awesome.
Let me share, go ahead, yes.
Oh, I was just saying thanks.
Hey, no problem. Let me just share a resource here. It's right from GitHub. I'll just paste it in the chat. There you go. So what I just went through, it's it's documented in GitHub and how to resolve a conflict. So just bookmark this if you can, because chances are you'll run into it. So
Awesome.
yeah, thank you.
All right, thanks, Ketan.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Quick question.
Yeah.
So after we see merge pull requests, do we have to download the files and then work on it, or?
No, but what you'll want to do is make sure you have the most recent before you start. So if a pull request was just done and you haven't updated your main branch to be the most current version, then you'll want to be sure that you're pulling and updating your main before you branch off of that to be able to make your changes.
I see. So all the changes from the pull requests are reflected in your code because it's connected to GitHub?
Yes, that's correct.
Oh, I see. Okay,
that's correct. Yep.
So we would pull it. We would make sure we're on our main branch at our home computer, pull down whatever everyone else has updated to our main, and then create a branch on our computer and then create our edits.
Okay, so just first of all, you probably don't want to work with the main branch, right? So your main branch is usually your production branch. So I don't know if we're gonna get into that in this session, but you know, you don't want to work off of the main branch.
Yeah,
right?
always split a branch off of a main branch to do any
Correct.
kind of feature adds, changes to code, anything like that. Yeah,
And so
always make
when
any
you said
changes in a
when you
branch.
said pull it down to your main, you meant just pull it down to the branch you're working on at that time.
Yeah, well, you can keep a copy of the whatever the main production branch is locally. Just don't
That's
make
what I
any
meant,
changes
yeah.
in that local main.
Correct.
Yes, yeah, there you go.
Okay.
We're on the same page now.
Yeah.
See,
Okay.
communication, it
There
works.
you go.
All right, perfect. Any other questions about merge conflicts anybody wants to discuss or go over? Good. All right. So just a culture reminder, respect and professionalism. So take turns speaking, listen to ideas and ask questions to understand more or discuss it among the group to see if the idea is right for the team and for the project. Be sure that everybody has equal opportunity to be able to share their ideas and suggestions. And it applies to written words as well. Like if you're meeting, then obviously you want to be respectful of each other and listen to each other. But as you're typing to each other, because there might be a lot of your communication that's happening asynchronously, don't use all caps unless you're happy. For example, yeah. Blaming and complaining doesn't solve problems, but if you're asking for help or if you are offering help, does. So be help oriented. And then just be aware of differences between yourselves and use them to strengthen the team. So instead of having it, cause a divide, then it's like, oh, well, if people have two differences of opinion on how to build this particular feature, let's listen to both and see. It means we have more options to decide what's going to be best. And it might be the best solution is somewhere in the middle. So be sure that you're being respectful and open to other ideas and concepts. And then just look out for each other, help each other, be honest with each other, say, hey, I'm sick as a dog this week. I'm probably not going to get much done. Or, the kids are driving me bananas. Can I just hold off and I will get this part of the project done tomorrow night? Whatever the case may be, just be helpful and communicative as much as you're able to. All right, so prepare for a fast pace because 8 weeks is a short time and it flies by. So don't wait to search for problems or solutions to your problems. So in class, you had a week to be able to work on your lesson. Maybe, third day into your assignment, you're like, I'm not getting it, but I'm going to keep struggling with it for a little bit. And then by the time Monday or Tuesday rolled around, then it's like, okay, I need help, and you got help and we're able to solve the solution. But it's a tighter time frame since it's only 8 weeks. So if you've worked on something for an hour and you're completely stuck and you can't get things to work, then start talking to your teammates. Hey, this is what I'm running into. Can somebody help me wrap my head around what's going wrong here? You can talk to your little rubber duckies or, like talk to the imaginary friend in the room and walk through your code to try and explain what it's doing to work through the problem. All those fun debugging skills and things that we've talked about. And I'd mentioned about communicating. So if you're going to be traveling, if you're sick, if you had a change in your circumstances that are going to affect your work, then just let people know. You don't have to give details like, oh, I was, sick throwing up in the toilet for 5 hours or something. You don't have to be that detailed, but you could just be like, I'm not feeling well. I'm going to take care of this tomorrow. Focus on your team and your individual learning skills. The project is just a byproduct. So we really want you to focus on working with each other, and any areas that you feel you need to strengthen from the coursework, then be sure that you're getting some exposure to that, or at least collaborating with your teammates to strengthen your skills in those areas. So then next steps at the end of the practicum, then you'll do self and peer evaluations. And guess what? The topics aren't, how perfect was every little thing, and did they carry our team or did they completely fail us? It's on things like whether or not you were engaged in the meetings and engaged with the group. Yes, they do factor into your technical skills as far as if they feel like there are areas that you need to strengthen, or if you feel like there are areas within yourself that you need to strengthen, or if you're pretty solid with your technical skills. Communication, collaboration that we've talked about throughout this whole session, and initiative, whether or not you're a go-getter to go and find solutions and try and attempt them, or if you want to kind of look outside your comfort zone and learn new things. So the presentation is just going to be a short 5-minute demo at that weekly cafe that I was mentioning. The only people on that call are just Code the Dream staff and apprentices. And as you all hopefully know and have experienced, we're a pretty loving group. So you don't have to worry or be nervous about your presentations. You're just going to get a lot of positivity and support. And we want you to just be able to share about what your experience was like throughout Practicum and how far you got with your project. And if there were things that maybe you want to change going forward or add into it, do you want to take it all the way to deployment or not? You know, if you weren't able to get that far in 8 weeks, that kind of a thing. So I think that covers it. Questions?
Yeah, so when do we have to come up with an idea? Like, when do we have to decide what we're going to do by? And like, when is that ball going to start rolling?
I believe for the React teams, it's by the end of the 2nd week. Then you definitely need to have your idea solidified and have at least sort of a general framework built for it. Week 1 and week 2 of your curriculum planning will kind of give that an idea. I think week 1, and correct me if I'm wrong, Gaetan, because he just finished mentoring the last Practicum groups. But I think week 1 is when you all sort of like brainstorm and come up with your idea, and then 2, you start to implement. Yeah, okay. All right. Other questions? All right. Does anybody have any questions about sort of what the apprenticeship experience is like? Sinan, I don't know if you want to share as far as like what that experience is once you're out of Practicum, if you've been accepted into the apprenticeship, sort of what your day-to-day looks like or anything like that?
Sure, definitely. I can share actually. Yeah, hi everyone. Again, I'm Stan. Last year, I started the apprenticeship after finishing my course actually, and yeah, I can say like it was a really great experience for me because like I didn't have any work experience in the tech industry before. Like I didn't work in the team, and kind of like when I first started working my project in the Code the Dream, as an apprentice, like at the beginning, like it was kind of like so new for me working in the team in the agile methodology. We also use the Scrum in our as a method, and kind of like getting used to this, I think so important because I see like when you go into the field, it is going to be so important to work in the project and doing things with the others, and that internship really gave me that confidence actually and experience. And this is one of the most important things. Also, beside that, like I really had chance to like to learn new things in the apprenticeship because we are really working on the nice project. We are implementing the new stuff coming from the client request. Actually, basically, like we are building an application. Some organization use this, and based on their needs, actually, we are implementing new features. And this is really giving me the sense of the real work environment actually, and also having that meetings with the client, what the client needs, like understanding it's also important, and knowing the not just for fun we are building things, we are really building something useful for the people actually and the organization. And yeah, in general it was great experience for me. And like if you guys have any specific question, I will be happy to answer.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sinan. He's an all-star apprentice. We love having him on his team. And the one takeaway that I want you to especially have from him sharing his experience was that it's a whole different animal when you have a client involved. So that's why we really want you to get comfortable working on a team, because right now you have the creative independence to decide what you want to build and how you want to build it. Once you're on a real world project, you don't necessarily have that kind of fluidity. You can't determine like, oh, well, why don't we do it this way? Because you might be working with something that a client already had structured with another company. And so you have to make adjustments to what was already built. Or they might have specifics of this is how I need or want it to run. And so you have to kind of work within those confines. So enjoy the freedom that you have in the Practicum experience, because that will disappear to some extent once you're working with clients in a real world position, whether it's with the apprenticeship with us or out in a dev shop. So I think that's it. I'm going to stick around. If anybody has any questions, feel free to fire them off. But otherwise, thanks for coming, everyone. And I hope we have a really great Practicum experience, and just reach out to me if there's anything that you need throughout the process.
All right, team, let's get it.
Yep.
Yeah, I think so.
Build great things, have fun.